#1 hook. My name is Allison Misha, and I'm 28 years old. Last Tuesday, I came home early from work and immediately knew something was wrong. The house felt different, disturbed somehow. As I walked upstairs, I heard unfamiliar voices coming from my bedroom. My heart pounded as I pushed open the door and found 3 strange men rifling through my things. They claimed to be renovation workers, but my instincts screamed danger. I had no idea that moment would unravel my entire life. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button to follow my journey through the craziest week of my life. Before everything fell apart, I was living what I thought was a pretty great life. After graduating with my marketing degree 5 years ago, I'd worked my way up to marketing coordinator at Reynolds & Associates, one of the top firms in our region. Just 3 months earlier, I'd received a promotion that came with a nice salary bump, the culmination of countless late nights and weekends spent proving myself. That promotion had been particularly sweet because it meant I could finally start renovating the small 2-bedroom house I'd purchased last year. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, the first place I'd ever own. Located in Mapleton Heights, a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns, it represented everything I'd worked for. Independence, security, achievement. "You've done amazing for yourself, Allie," my mom had said during her last visit, pride shining in her eyes. Not many 28-year-olds can say they own their own home. I loved everything about my neighborhood. Mrs. Peterson next door, who always brought over her famous banana bread when she baked. The Collins family across the street with their golden retriever, Buddy, who'd greet me every morning when I left for work. The safety I felt walking around at dusk, admiring the changing colors of the sunset reflecting off my neighbor's windows. That sense of security now seems like a cruel joke. Then there was Marcus, handsome, charming, successful Marcus Thompson. We'd been dating for 2 years after meeting at a friend's barbecue. He worked in finance and always dressed impeccably, tailored suits, designer washes, the works. I'd been drawn to his confidence, his ambition, the way he seemed to command any room he entered. He was the kind of guy who remembered birthdays, who'd surprise me with flowers just because, who'd call just to say he was thinking about me. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Allie," he'd whisper, tucking my hair behind my ear in that way that always made my heart flutter. About 6 months into our relationship, I'd given him a spare key to my house. It seemed like the natural progression of things. He'd stay over a few nights a week, keep some clothes in my closet, make coffee for us both in the morning. Looking back, I can see the red flags I'd conveniently ignored, his subtle criticisms of my friends, his questions about my spending habits, his occasional fits of jealousy when I mentioned male coworkers. But hindsight is painfully clear, isn't it? When I got my promotion, I decided it was finally time to fix up the outdated kitchen and master bathroom. The avocado green tiles from the 1970s had to go, along with the leaky faucets and cracked countertops. I'd saved enough for a decent renovation, nothing extravagant, but quality work that would last. "You should use Thompson Renovations," Marcus had suggested one night over dinner. "My buddy Dave runs it. He'll give you a good deal and make sure the work is done right." I'd hesitated initially. I should probably get a few quotes, right? That's what everyone says to do. Marcus had frowned slightly. "Don't you trust me? Dave's company is the best in the area. Besides, he's doing me a favor by fitting you into his schedule. He's usually booked months in advance." So I signed the contract with Thompson Renovations and paid a $5,000 deposit, roughly a third of the total cost. Work was scheduled to begin the following month, with an initial assessment of the bathroom plumbing coming sometime that week. The morning of that fateful Tuesday had been particularly hectic. I had an important presentation for a potential new client at 9:00 a.m., and I'd overslept after staying up late finalizing my slides. As I rushed around getting ready, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Morning beautiful. Dave might send some guys over today to check out the bathroom situation, just FY." I'd barely glanced at it as I applied mascara with one hand while gulping down coffee with the other. "Okay T-Shex," I'd replied hastily, not even asking for details about when they might arrive or who exactly would be coming. Little did I know that this simple exchange, this moment of distraction and trust, would be the beginning of a nightmare that would turn my entire life upside down. My presentation had gone exceptionally well. The clients were impressed, my boss was beaming, and we wrapped up nearly 2 hours earlier than anticipated. Riding the high of professional success, I decided to take advantage of the unexpected free time and work from home for the rest of the day. As I turned onto my street around 2:30 p.m., I noticed an unfamiliar white van parked in my driveway. They had no company logo, no identifying information at all, just a plain white van with slightly tinted windows. A small twinge of unease flitted through my stomach, but I quickly dismissed it. These must be the workers Marcus had mentioned. I parked on the street and approached my front door, keys in hand. The door was unlocked, which struck me as odd. I always locked it, even when I was home. Inside, the house felt different. The air smelled unfamiliar, a mixture of cigarette smoke and something metallic. A jacket I didn't recognize was draped over my living room chair. A half-empty soda can sat on my coffee table without a coaster, a small detail that nonetheless felt invasive. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. "I'm home, the homeowner." No response came, but I could hear movement upstairs, shuffling, a muted conversation, the sound of drawers opening and closing. These weren't the sounds of bathroom inspection. My bathroom was downstairs, off the main hallway. My heart began to race as I slowly climbed the stairs, each creak of the wooden steps announcing my approach. The sounds were coming from my bedroom, not the upstairs guest bathroom. As I reached the top landing, I heard a man's voice say, "Hurry up, we don't have all day." I stood frozen for a moment, fear and confusion washing over me in alternating waves. Should I leave, call the police, confront them? Before I could decide, my body made the choice for me, propelling me forward until I was pushing open my bedroom door. 3 men turned to look at me, startled by my sudden appearance. They were definitely not professional contractors. One was rifling through my dresser drawers, another stood by my closet with my jewelry box in his hands, and the third was removing what looked like a small device from my ceiling vent. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" The tallest of the 3, a muscular man with a close-cropped beard and a scar above his right eyebrow, recovered first. "We're with Thompson Renovations, ma'am. Just checking the bathroom situation like we were asked to." "This isn't the bathroom," I said, my eyes darting between them and the various items of mine they'd been handling. "And why are you going through my personal belongings?" "Just checking for water damage, ma'am," said the second man, quickly setting down my jewelry box. He was shorter, with dark hair slicked back and a nervous demeanor. "Sometimes it can spread through the walls, affect the whole room." The third man, who had quickly pocketed the device he'd been holding, nodded vigorously. "Your boyfriend let us in, said to check everything thoroughly." Something about the way he said boyfriend made my skin crawl. These men knew Marcus, and this was no routine inspection. "I need to see some ID," I said, pulling out my phone. "And I'm calling Thompson Renovations right now to verify who you are." The 3 men exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "No need for that," said the tall one, his friendly demeanor shifting slightly. "We're just finishing up here. We'll get out of your way." They began gathering their tools, if you could call them that. I didn't see any typical contractor equipment. Instead, they had small electronic devices, a laptop, and what looked like miniature cameras. "Marcus gave us the key," the nervous one said as they edged past me toward the hallway. "Said you knew we were coming." "I'd like the key back," I said firmly, though my hand was shaking as I held it out. "Don't have it with us," the tall one said smoothly. "Marcus let us in himself." Something in his tone told me he was lying. I followed them downstairs, maintaining distance but unwilling to let them out of my sight. As they headed for the door, the third man, who hadn't spoken much, pulled out his phone and stepped outside, having a hurried conversation I couldn't quite hear. Once they were all outside, I locked the door behind them and watched through the window as they climbed into the unmarked van and drove away. Only then did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. My hands shook uncontrollably as I called the number for Thompson Renovations that I had saved in my contact. While waiting for someone to answer, I rushed back upstairs to my bedroom. My heart sank as I surveyed the scene. Drawers left partially open, clothes disturbed. My jewelry box out of place. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find several pieces missing, my grandmother's pearl earrings, a white gold necklace Marcus had given me for our first anniversary, and a diamond tennis bracelet. But the theft of jewelry paled in comparison to what I discovered next. As I looked up at the vent where I'd seen the third man working, something caught my eye, a tiny blinking red light. Standing on my bed for a closer look, I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a camera, a small, sophisticated camera hidden in my bedroom vent, angled directly at my bed. The realization hit me like a physical blow. These weren't workers. They were thieves at best, predators at worst, and somehow, Marcus was involved. My fingers trembled as I dialed Marcus's number. Each ring heightened my anxiety until his smooth, confident voice answered. "Hey babe, what's up? How did the presentation go?" His casual tone, so normal and untroubled, momentarily made me doubt myself. Was I overreacting? Had there been some misunderstanding? "Marcus," I said, my voice shaking, "there were 3 men in my house just now. In my bedroom. They said they were workers from Thompson Renovations, but they were going through my things. They said you let them in." A pause, too long to be innocent. "Oh, those were Dave's guys," he said finally. "I told you they were coming today, remember, to check out the bathroom situation." "They weren't in the bathroom, Marcus. They were in my bedroom, going through my jewelry and installing some kind of camera in my vent. And several of my valuable pieces are missing." Another pause. I could almost hear him calculating his response. "Allison, you're being paranoid," he said, his voice taking on that condescending tone I'd heard before but always ignored. "They're professional contractors. They wouldn't steal from you, and why would they install a camera? That doesn't even make sense." "I know what I saw, Marcus." My shock was giving way to anger. "They had no ID, no company uniforms, no proper tools. And they were clearly not supposed to be in my bedroom." "You're overreacting," he said dismissively. "This is exactly like the time you thought your neighbor was stalking you because he happened to check his mail at the same time as you 3 days in a row. Remember how embarrassed you were when you realized how ridiculous that sounded?" That was a deliberate mischaracterization of something I'd mentioned offhandedly months ago. A classic Marcus tactic that I was only now recognizing for what it was, gaslighting. "I'm calling Dave right now," I said firmly, "and then I'm calling the police." "Don't bother Dave with this," Marcus said quickly. "He's extremely busy, and definitely don't call the police. You'll look foolish when you realize this is all a misunderstanding. I'll come over later and we can talk about it, okay?" I hung up without responding. My gut was screaming that something was very wrong, and for once, I decided to listen to it. I immediately called Thompson Renovations, using the number from their official website rather than the one Marcus had given me. "Thompson Renovations, this is Jenny speaking. How can I help you?" "Hi Jenny, this is Allison Michel. I recently signed a contract with your company for a kitchen and bathroom renovation. I was told some workers would be coming to my house today to inspect the bathroom, but I'm a bit concerned about the men who showed up." "Let me check our schedule," Jenny said. I could hear keyboard clicking in the background. "Michelle, I'm not seeing any appointments scheduled for today. In fact, according to our records, your initial assessment isn't scheduled until next Monday." My blood ran cold. "So you didn't send anyone to my house today?" "No ma'am, definitely not. All our technicians carry ID badges and drive company vehicles with our logo. Did someone claim to be from Thompson Renovations?" I thanked her for the information and hung up, my mind racing. If those men weren't from the renovation company, who were they? And why had Marcus lied about it? With growing dread, I began a thorough search of my house. In addition to the camera in my bedroom vent, I found another one hidden in the bathroom light fixture and a third behind a decorative picture frame in the living room. All were small, sophisticated devices that would be easy to miss if you weren't specifically looking for them. Even more disturbing, I found evidence that this wasn't their first visit. There were subtle signs someone had been in my house before, items slightly out of place, my personal documents had been rifled through, and my computer showed signs of tampering. With shaking hands, I connected to my home Wi-Fi and used my phone to scan for unknown devices. The search revealed an unauthorized server hidden within my network, accessible remotely. My stomach turned as I managed to access it and discovered dozens of videos, of me sleeping, changing clothes, even intimate moments with Marcus. They had been recording me for weeks. As the horrifying reality sank in, I began researching the men I'd encountered. Using social media and public records, I was able to identify the tall one with the scar, James Renner, with a criminal record including fraud and breaking and entering. The nervous one with slicked back hair was Kevin Dawson, previously charged with identity theft, though the charges had mysteriously been dropped. The most damning evidence came from a neighborhood social media group I belonged to. When I described the unmarked white van, a neighbor from 2 streets over recognized it. She'd seen it parked outside her house the week before she experienced a similar break-in. The thieves had taken her jewelry and financial documents. The case was still unsolved. As night fell, I sat in my kitchen with all the evidence spread before me, screenshots of the videos, information about the workers, and records of similar crimes in the area. The pattern was undeniable. This was no random break-in. This was a sophisticated operation targeting women, and somehow, Marcus was connected to it all. Just as I was about to call the police, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't do anything stupid, Allison. We have enough material to ruin you. Think carefully before you talk to anyone." Minutes later, another text arrived. "We know where you live, where you work, and everything about you. Keep quiet and this all goes away." My hands trembled as I set down my phone. They were monitoring me somehow, right now, but how? I'd found the cameras. Then it hit me, my phone. With growing horror, I checked my phone's applications and discovered tracking software I hadn't installed. They'd been monitoring my location, my calls, my texts, my entire life, for months. Despite my terror, something hardened inside me. The violation was so complete, so invasive, that it paradoxically strengthened my resolve. I would not be a victim. I would not be silent. I called Marcus one more time, determined to get some answers. "I know what you did," I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "I know about the cameras, the videos, the tracking software. I know about James Renner and Kevin Dawson. What I don't know is why. Why would you do this to me, Marcus?" His response chilled me to the bone. "You really should have minded your own business, Allison," he said, his voice completely devoid of the warmth I'd once found so appealing. "We had a good thing going. I actually liked you, you know. A business is business. And now you've complicated things." "What business?" I demanded. "Stealing jewelry, installing cameras in women's bedrooms." He laughed coldly. "That's just the beginning. Think bigger, Allison. Identity theft, financial fraud, blackmail. Do you have any idea how much information the average person leaves lying around their house? How much data they store on their devices? How much their clean credit history is worth?" "How many others?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Enough," he replied. "And if you go to the police, I'll make sure everyone in your life sees those videos we've collected. Your boss, your parents, your friends. How do you think that will affect your perfect little career? Your reputation?" As he spoke, I was quietly gathering my essentials, laptop, important documents, a change of clothes. I needed to get out of the house. Somewhere safe where I could think. "You won't get away with this," I said. "I already have, sweetheart." Multiple times, the confidence in his voice made my skin crawl. "Be smart, Allison. Forget what you saw today, and maybe we can still salvage something from this situation." I hung up without another word, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. As I pulled out of my driveway, I noticed a car parked down the street, its headlights off. The driver was washing my house. They were already washing me. The nightmare was only beginning. Turn on screen reader support. To enable screen reader support, press Ctrl plus Alt plus Z. To learn about keyboard shortcuts, press Ctrl plus try. Nguyen has joined the document. I spent that night at my friend Rachel's apartment, too terrified to stay in my own home. I told her I had a plumbing emergency and needed a place to crash, unwilling to share the full horrifying truth just yet. Sleep was impossible as my mind raced through everything that had happened. By morning, I had made my decision. Despite Marcus's threats, I needed to go to the police. I documented everything meticulously, screenshots of the threatening texts, photos of the hidden cameras, a timeline of events, information about the men I'd identified. I even recorded my last phone conversation with Marcus, where he had practically confessed to running a criminal operation. The evidence was overwhelming. Around 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Final warning, police involvement means your private videos go public. Think about your career, your family, choose wisely." The message only strengthened my resolve. I would not be controlled by fear. As I prepared to leave for the police station, Rachel knocked on the guest room door. "Allison, there's someone trying to get into your house. Mrs. Peterson just called me." My elderly neighbor had my friend's number for emergencies. My heart raced as Rachel showed me the text message from Mrs. Peterson describing a man attempting to force open my back door before being scared off by her barking dog. Should we call the police? Rachel asked, clearly concerned. I'm already planning to, I said, finally ready to tell her everything. Rachel, I need to explain what's really going on. Her eyes widened as I recounted the events of the previous day, showing her the evidence. Oh my God, Allie, she whispered when I finished. This is serious, like really serious. These people sound dangerous. I know, I admitted, but if I don't do something, they'll just keep doing this to other women. As we spoke, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had attempted to access my bank account. Then another notification, a credit card application had been submitted in my name. They were moving quickly now, trying to do as much damage as possible before I could stop them. They're trying to clean me out, I said, showing Rachel the alerts. We need to go to the police right now. As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Against my better judgment, I answered and put it on speaker so Rachel could hear. You're making a big mistake, Allison, he said without preamble. James and Kevin are upset. They think you're a liability now. Is that supposed to scare me? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. It should. These aren't nice guys when they're crossed. That attempt at your back door this morning, that was just a warning. Next time, your neighbor's dog won't stop them. Rachel's eyes widened in alarm. How did you know about that? I demanded, though I already knew the answer. They were washing my house. We know everything about you, Allison. Where you are right now, who you're with, what you're planning. Back off now or things will get ugly. You're threatening me, I said, making sure to state it clearly for the recording I was making. You and your associates have broken into my home, installed hidden cameras, stolen my property, and are now threatening me with violence if I go to the police. You have no proof of any of that, he said with a laugh. It's your word against mine. And I'm a respected financial advisor with no criminal record. You're just a hysterical woman making wild accusations. We'll see about that, I said and hung up. Rachel looked at me with a mixture of horror and admiration. I can't believe that's the same Marcus you've been dating. He sounds like a completely different person. He is, I said quietly. I never really knew him at all. As we headed for her car, I noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. It hadn't been there earlier. Don't look now, I whispered to Rachel, but I think we're being followed. What do we do? She asked, her voice tight with fear. Change of plans, I said. Let's take your car but not go directly to the police station. We need to make sure we lose them first. For the next hour, we drove an erratic route through the city, making sudden turns, doubling back, and even going through a shopping mall parking garage with multiple exits. Eventually, confident we'd lost our tail, we headed for the police station. As we pulled into the parking lot, my phone buzzed with one final text. You've made your choice. Now deal with the consequences. Attached was a screenshot showing that compromising videos of me had been uploaded to a server, ready to be distributed. I stomached churn, but I refused to be deterred. Some things were more important than embarrassment or reputation. This had to end. With Rachel by my side for moral support, I walked into the police station, evidence in hand, ready to finally tell my story. The next morning, I awoke to insistent knocking on Rachel's apartment door. After giving my statement to the police the previous day, a process that had taken hours, we'd returned to her place, both too exhausted to talk much before falling asleep. The detectives had seemed concerned but noncommittal, telling me they would look into it and be in touch. Rachel answered the door while I remained in the guest room, still in my pajamas and not quite ready to face the day. I heard male voices, followed by Rachel calling my name. Allison, there are police officers here. They want to speak with you. My heart sank. Had Marcus followed through on his threat? Were the videos already public? Was I about to be humiliated in front of everyone I knew? With trembling hands, I pulled on a sweatshirt and stepped into the living room. Two plainclothes detectives stood there, a tall African-American man with salt and pepper hair and a younger woman with auburn hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. They weren't the same officers I'd spoken to yesterday. Miss Michelle, the male detective asked, showing his badge. I'm Detective Williams, and this is Detective Rodriguez. We need to speak with you about Marcus Thompson. Is this about my report from yesterday? I asked cautiously. The detectives exchanged glances. Partially, Detective Rodriguez said, but there's more. May we sit down? Once we were all seated, Rachel hovering protectively nearby, Detective Williams began. Miss Michelle, we've been investigating Marcus Thompson and his associates for the past 6 months. They're part of a sophisticated identity theft and blackmail operation targeting successful women across 3 counties. I stared at them in disbelief. You already knew. Then why didn't anyone warn me? We didn't know about you specifically, Detective Rodriguez explained gently. We've identified several victims, but we believe there are many more. These men are careful, methodical. They leave very little evidence. Until now, Detective Williams added. Your statement yesterday, combined with the evidence you provided, gives us what we need to move forward with arrests. You're not the first victim, Miss Michaud, but you're the first to come forward with this level of documentation. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by a new wave of anxiety. What about the videos? Marcus threatened to release them if I went to the police. We've already seized several servers containing compromising material of various victims, Detective Rodriguez assured me. Our cyber crimes unit is working to locate and remove all copies. I can't promise they've gotten everything, but they're very good at what they do. As the detectives continued explaining the situation, the full picture emerged, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Marcus Thompson was not a financial advisor as he'd claim. His real name was Marcus Teller, and he had a history of fraud charges that had somehow been expunged from his record. He was the linchpin in an operation that specifically targeted professional women living alone. His role was to identify and cultivate relationships with potential victims, gaining their trust and access to their homes. Then his associates, including James Renner and Kevin Dawson, would install surveillance equipment, gather personal and financial information, and steal valuable items that could be easily pawned. But it gets worse, Detective Williams said grimly. Once they had enough compromising material and personal information, they would move on to the main event, emptying bank accounts, taking out loans and credit cards, even refinancing homes in some cases. All while using the threat of releasing intimate videos to keep their victims quiet. How many women? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We've confirmed 8 victims so far, Detective Rodriguez answered. But based on the evidence we've gathered, we believe the number could be as high as 25 to 30 women over the past 3 years. The scale of the operation left me speechless. All those women, all those lives disrupted or destroyed. And I had almost become just another statistic, another victim too embarrassed or frightened to speak up. There's something else you should know, Detective Williams said, his expression serious. When we executed a search warrant on Thompson's apartment this morning, we found extensive files on you, financial records, personal information, copies of your identification documents. They were planning to completely take over your identity. We also found evidence that they had already opened several accounts in your name, Detective Rodriguez added. Credit cards, personal loans, even paperwork for a second mortgage on your house. They were moving quickly, presumably because you'd discovered. My head spun with the implications. They hadn't just been washing me, they'd been preparing to destroy me financially. If I hadn't come home early that day, if I hadn't caught them in the act, I might not have discovered what was happening until it was too late, until my credit was ruined, my bank accounts emptied, my home leveraged to the hilt. What happens now? I asked, trying to absorb everything they were telling me. We're executing additional search warrants and making arrests as we speak, Detective Williams explained. Thompson, Renner, and Dawson are already in custody. We'll need you to formally identify them and provide additional testimony, but with the evidence we have, including your statement, we're confident they'll be facing significant jail time. As they continued explaining the legal process ahead, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief that the nightmare might soon be over, anger at how completely I'd been deceived, and a lingering fear that somehow, Marcus and his accomplices might still find a way to hurt me. Will I be safe? I asked finally. Marcus threatened me, said there would be consequences. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward, her expression both kind and determined. We're taking those threats very seriously, Miss Michaud. We'll have patrol cars monitoring your residence, and we can connect you with victim services who can help with security assessments and protective measures. After the detectives left, promising to stay in close contact, Rachel and I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. I can't believe how close you came to, Rachel trailed off, unable to finish the thought. To losing everything, I finished for her. My savings, my house, my reputation, my credit, my entire identity. But you didn't, she said firmly, taking my hand. You fought back, you trusted your instincts. And now these creeps are going to jail where they belong. I nodded, trying to draw strength from her words. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that this wasn't over yet. Marcus and his friends had connections, resources, and they had nothing left to lose. That afternoon, I returned to my house accompanied by a police officer to collect more of my belongings. The place no longer felt like home. Every corner, every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every object raised questions about who might have touched it, examined it, used it against me. As I packed a larger suitcase with clothes and essentials, my phone rang. Unknown number. With the officer washing, I answered and put it on speaker. You think this is over, Marcus's voice, tight with rage. This is just the beginning, Allison. I have friends you haven't met yet, friends who owe me favors. The officer immediately got on his radio, reporting the call, while motioning for me to keep Marcus talking. You're in jail, Marcus, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's over, the police know everything. They don't know half of what I've done, he spat. And they don't know what's coming for you. You should have kept your mouth shut, Allison. Now you're going to learn what happens to women who cross me. The call ended abruptly. The officer assured me they would trace it, though we both knew it was likely a contraband phone or a call arranged through a third party. That night, staying at a hotel the police had recommended for my safety, I sat staring out the window at the city lights, wondering if I would ever feel safe again. The police had arrested the main players, but how many others were involved? How far did this network extend? As if in answer to my unspoken questions, my laptop pinged with an email notification. The subject line read simply, "You're not alone." With trembling fingers, I opened it to find a message from an unfamiliar address. Miss Misha, my name is Rebecca Lawson. I saw your name in a police report connected to Marcus Teller. I was one of his victims 2 years ago. There are more of us, many more. We've been too afraid to come forward until now. Would you be willing to meet? Together, we might be able to ensure these men never hurt anyone else again. Attached was a photo of a woman with Marcus, a different woman, not me, the same charming smile on his face, the same arm around her shoulders. The same predatory gleam in his eyes that I had somehow never noticed before. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt something beyond fear and violation. I felt resolve. Marcus and his associates hadn't just picked the wrong victim. They had created their own worst nightmare, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The following days passed in a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. I couldn't return to my house, not yet. The violation was too raw, the memories too fresh. Instead, I extended my hotel stay, creating a makeshift command center in the small room that became my temporary home. My first priority was security. With the help of a cybersecurity expert recommended by Detective Rodriguez, I systematically reclaimed my digital life. We changed every password, secured all my accounts with two-factor authentication, and performed a complete factory reset on all my devices after backing up essential data. They were thorough, Tim, the security expert, said as he examined my laptop. Keyloggers, remote access tools, even GPS tracking software. They wanted to know everything about you. Can you remove it all? I asked, watching him work. Already done, he assured me, but we need to be proactive about preventing future attacks. These guys might have friends on the outside. Together, we created a new security protocol for my digital life, separate emails for different purposes, unique complex passwords stored in an encrypted manager, regular security audits, and a VPN for all internet activity. It felt like overkill until I remembered the depth of the violation I'd experienced. My financial security came next. I spent hours on the phone with banks, credit card companies, and credit bureaus, placing freezes on my accounts, disputing fraudulent activities, and creating alerts for any new applications or changes. The financial damage was substantial but not catastrophic. We had caught it early enough to prevent the worst outcomes. You're actually lucky, said the fraud specialist at my bank. Most victims don't discover the theft until months later, when the damage is much more extensive. Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen, but I understood what she meant. If I hadn't come home early that day, if I hadn't trusted my instincts. The hardest call was to my parents. I had been avoiding it, not wanting to worry them, but as the case gained local media attention, I knew they needed to hear it from me first. "Someone broke into your house?" My mother's voice rose with alarm. "Are you her? Do you need us to come?" "I'm safe, Mom," I assured her, sharing a sanitized version of events that emphasized the theft while minimizing the surveillance and personal violation. "The police have the guys in custody. It's just going to take some time to sort everything out." After hanging up, I felt guilty about the partial truth I'd share. But how could I tell my parents about the cameras, the videos, the complete invasion of my most intimate moments? Some details were mine to process in my own way, in my own time. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, one email remained at the forefront of my mind: Rebecca Lawson's message. After verifying her identity through Detective Rodriguez, I agreed to meet her at a cafe near the police station. Rebecca was in her early 30s, with short blonde hair and the cautious demeanor of someone who had learned the hard way not to trust easily. As we sat across from each other, nursing cups of coffee neither of us was drinking, I recognized in her eyes the same haunted look I now saw in my own mirror. "It started the same way for me," she said after we'd exchanged awkward introductions. "Marcus was charming, attentive. I thought I'd hit the jackpot." "How long were you together?" I asked. "Almost a year. Long enough for him to gain complete access to my life. My home, my finances, my privacy." She couldn't quite meet my eyes on the last word. By the time I realized something was wrong, they had already opened credit cards in my name, taken out loans. They had videos they threatened to send to my colleagues, my family. "What did you do?" I asked, leaning forward. "I paid," she admitted, shame coloring her voice. "For months, I paid whatever they asked. I was too embarrassed to go to the police, too afraid of the videos becoming public. They took everything, my savings, my retirement fund. I had to sell my condo. Even then, it wasn't enough." "What changed?" "They got greedy," she said with a bitter smile. "They tried to refinance my parents' house using forged documents with my signature. That's when I finally went to the police. But by then, Marcus had disappeared. New name, new identity, new hunting ground." "Which apparently included me," I said quietly. Rebecca nodded. "You're the first victim who caught them in the act. The first with enough evidence to really put them away. That's why I contacted you. There are others, Allison, at least 7 of us that I've found so far." By the end of our meeting, Rebecca had shared contact information for 5 other women, all successful professionals, all victims of Marcus and his operation, all too frightened or embarrassed to come forward until now. Each had lost something different: money, property, relationships, career opportunities, but all shared the same profound sense of violation and betrayal. That night, I created a secure messaging group for all of us to communicate and coordinate. Within days, our group had grown to 11 women, each with her own story of manipulation and exploitation at the hands of Marcus Teller and his associate. "We need to work together," I wrote to the group. "Share information, compare experiences, build a case so strong they'll never see daylight again." The response was overwhelming. Women who had been suffering in silence for years suddenly had a community, a purpose. We began compiling evidence, documenting patterns, creating timelines that demonstrated the systematic nature of the operation. "This isn't just about putting them in jail," said Diane, a corporate attorney who had lost nearly $200,000 to the scheme. "This is about reclaiming our power, our voices." 2 weeks after my initial discovery, Detective Williams called with an update. "They're offering a plea deal," he said without preamble. "The DA thinks we should take it. Guaranteed prison time without the risk of trial." "How much time?" I asked. 5 to 7 years for Marcus, less for the others." "That's not enough," I said immediately, thinking of the 11 women I now knew, and the many more we hadn't yet identified. "Not for what they did, not for how many lives they've damaged." "The DA is concerned about the videos," Detective Williams admitted reluctantly. "If this goes to trial, there's no guarantee they won't become part of the public record. He's trying to protect the victim's privacy." I understood the concern, but something in me had changed over the past 2 weeks. The fear and shame that had initially paralyzed me had transformed into something else, a determination that transcended personal embarrassment. "What if the victims don't want that protection?" I asked. "What if we're willing to testify, to face them in court, regardless of the personal cost?" There was a long pause on the line. "How many are we talking about?" he finally asked. 11 confirmed so far," I said, "all willing to come forward, all with documentation." Another pause. That would change things, he admitted. Significantly. Let me talk to the DA again. The next day, I organized a meeting between our victim group and the district attorney's office. One by one, we shared our stories: the manipulation, the invasion, the theft, the blackmail. The pattern was undeniable, the impact devastating, and the resolve in that room palpable. By the end of the meeting, the DA had withdrawn the plea offer. Marcus Teller and his associates would face a trial with multiple victims presenting a united front, regardless of the personal cost. This won't be easy, the DA warned us. Their defense will be aggressive. They'll try to discredit you, embarrass you, paint you as willing participants rather than victims. Let them try, said Rebecca, speaking for all of us. We've already survived the worst they could do. As I left the meeting, Detective Rodriguez pulled me aside. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. Marcus has been making calls from jail. We've been monitoring them as part of the investigation. My stomach tightened. Anne. He's been trying to arrange something. We're not sure what yet, but he's made contact with people outside. People we haven't identified yet. You think I'm still in danger? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I think you should be careful, she said, very careful. We're doing everything we can, but... She didn't need to finish the thought. The threat remained, perhaps diminished but still present. Marcus had friends, connections, and he had nothing left to lose. That night, as I prepared to finally return to my house, now equipped with a new security system, reinforced doors, and window sensors, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You've really stirred up a hornet's nest, Allison, Marcus's voice, somehow both familiar and utterly foreign now. 11 women, a class action. You have no idea what you're doing. How did you get this number? I demanded, already signaling to the police officer stationed outside my house. I have resources you can't imagine, he said, his voice cold. This crusade of yours, it's going to cost you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. I have all the time in the world. Actually, you don't, I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. You're looking at decades in prison, Marcus. By the time you get out, if you get out, you'll be an old man with nothing and no one. We'll see about that, he said, but I could hear the first hint of uncertainty in his voice. You should watch your back, Allison. No, Marcus, I said, a strange calm settling over me. You should watch yours, because I'm not hiding anymore. And neither are any of the other women you victimized. We're coming for you, all of us, together. And we will not stop until you pay for what you've done. I hung up and immediately reported the call to Detective Rodriguez. Within hours, Marcus's jail privileges had been revoked, and an investigation into his communication channels had begun. The threat wasn't gone. I knew that. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. The fear that had initially consumed me had transformed into something more powerful, a determination to see justice done, not just for myself but for all the women whose lives had been upended by these predators. As I finally walked back into my house that night, it still didn't feel like the same home I had left weeks earlier. The violation remained, the memories lingered. But now there was something else too, a sense of purpose, of community, of strength found through adversity. These men had thought we would be too ashamed, too frightened, too isolated to fight back. They had counted on our silence, our embarrassment, our desire to just make it all go away. They had fundamentally misunderstood the resilience of the women they had targeted, and that mistake would be their undoing. 1 year later, I stood at the back of the courtroom, watching as the judge delivered the sentence. Marcus Teller, 18 years, James Renner, 12 years. Tevin Dawson turned state's evidence and received 8 years in exchange for providing information that helped prosecutors identify and charge 4 additional members of the network. The trial had been everything the DA warned us it would be: brutal, invasive, traumatic in its own way. The defense had indeed tried to paint us as willing participants, as scorned lovers seeking revenge, as opportunists looking for a payday. But they had underestimated the power of 14 women. Our group had grown by 3 during the investigation, telling essentially the same story, presenting the same pattern of manipulation and exploitation. Most importantly, they had underestimated our courage. Every woman who testified knew the personal cost, knew the risk of public exposure, knew the trauma of reliving the violation in excruciating detail. And every woman had decided that justice was worth that cost. As the bailiff led the defendants away, Marcus turned to glare at me one last time. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away, refusing to be intimidated. He had taken so much from me, from all of us. But he had failed to take our strength, our dignity, our determination to ensure he could never harm another woman. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by the women who had become my closest friends and allies, I faced a bank of news cameras and reporters. "Miss Michelle, how do you feel about the verdict?" a reporter shouted. I stepped up to the microphones, acutely aware that my response would reach far beyond this courthouse, perhaps to other victims still suffering in silence. "Today isn't just about punishment," I said carefully. "It's about accountability. It's about recognizing that the violation of privacy, the abuse of trust, the exploitation of vulnerability, these are serious crimes with serious consequences. But most importantly, today is about reclaiming our voices, our power, our lives." In the months following the trial, our victim support group evolved into something more formal, a nonprofit organization called Reclaim, dedicated to supporting victims of identity theft, intimate partner surveillance, and technological abuse. What had begun as a desperate bid for justice had transformed into a mission to help others navigate the complex terrain of recovery and rebuilding. My own recovery was ongoing, a process rather than a destination. I had sold my house, unable to ever truly feel safe there again, and purchased a small condo in a secure building with doormen and security cameras. The irony of finding comfort in surveillance wasn't lost on me, but these cameras were there to protect me, not to violate me. My digital life remained carefully compartmentalized and secured, a habit I couldn't imagine ever abandoning. I changed passwords regularly, checked for unusual activity daily, and maintained a healthy skepticism about sharing personal information online. Hypervigilance, my therapist called it, a common response to trauma. She assured me it would ease with time, though it might never disappear completely. Dating was complicated. I had attempted a few first dates in recent months, each one preceded by extensive background checks, another skill I'd acquired through necessity. Most didn't progress to second dates, not because of any red flags, but because of my own lingering trust issues. Dr. Heller, my therapist, assured me this too was normal, part of the healing process. "Trust is rebuilt incrementally," she often reminded me. "Small risks, small successes, gradually expanding your comfort zone." The most unexpected aspect of recovery had been the community that emerged from tragedy. The women of Reclaim had become a family of sorts, bound by shared experience and common purpose. We celebrated each other's victories, supported each other through setbacks, and worked together to turn our individual traumas into collective strength. Through Reclaim, we developed educational programs for law enforcement, victim advocates, and technology companies. We created resources for victims navigating the complex aftermath of identity theft and privacy violations. We advocated for stronger laws and better protections against technological abuse. And we told our stories, carefully, selectively, but powerfully, to help others recognize the warning signs we had missed. "The greatest weapon these predators have is isolation," I explained during a presentation to a women's professional organization. "They want you to believe you're alone, that no one will understand, that reporting will only make things worse. Breaking that isolation, finding community and support, is the first step toward reclaiming your power." On the one-year anniversary of that fateful day, when I came home early to find strangers in my bedroom, I hosted a small gathering at my new condo for the core members of Reclaim. As we shared a meal and reflected on the journey of the past year, Rebecca raised her glass in a toast. "To Allison," she said, "who had the courage to fight back when it would have been easier to stay silent, who brought us together when we thought we were alone, who helped us reclaim not just our identities, but our voices." I felt tears threatening as I looked around at these remarkable women, each with her own story of trauma and resilience. "To all of us," I countered, raising my own glass, "for surviving what was meant to destroy us, for turning victimhood into advocacy, for using our pain to protect others." Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, I stepped onto my small balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The city spread out before me, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each with their own struggles and triumphs, vulnerabilities and strengths. A year ago, I had been naive in ways I could no longer afford to be. I had trusted too easily, questioned too little, ignored warning signs that now seemed glaringly obvious. The woman I had been then was gone, transformed by trauma but also by the determination to reclaim what had been taken from me. The new Allison was more cautious but also more courageous. More vigilant but also more connected. more realistic about the dangers of the world but also more committed to creating safety within it. As I looked out at the city lights, I thought about the countless women who might still be suffering in silence, afraid or ashamed to speak out about the violations they had experienced. And I renewed my commitment to reaching them, to showing them they weren't alone, to helping them find the same strength and community that had saved me. The healing wasn't complete, perhaps it never would be. The trauma had left its mark, changing how I moved through the world in ways both subtle and profound. But it hadn't defined me. They hadn't defeated me, and it had given me a purpose I never could have anticipated. Coming home early that day had been random chance, a quirk of timing that had exposed a nightmare but also set me on the path to something meaningful and important. In trying to destroy me, Marcus and his associates had inadvertently helped me discover a strength I never knew I possessed. As I turned to rejoin my friends, I felt a sense of peace that had been elusive for so long. The fear wasn't gone, the vigilance remained, but alongside them now existed purpose, community, and the quiet confidence that comes from surviving what once seemed unsurvivable. I had reclaimed my life, and in doing so I had found my voice. Have you ever experienced a moment when your intuition saved you from a potentially dangerous situation? Share your story in the comments below. Remember that speaking up not only helps in your own healing process but might also help someone else recognize warning signs in their own life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found value in my story. Together, we can create a community of awareness and support. Thank you for listening, and remember, trust your instincts, they're usually right.